Hey everybody, thanks so much for tuning in to check out this video. This is a yellow jacket nest removal from inside of an overhang underneath some soffit. And this particular nest was super big, but mainly because it was pretty much one comb, or one patty of comb, tall. So typically with this particular species, which is a German yellow jacket, they will build nests in cavities. Well, this cavity space was really only about 2 inches tall, and so they started building, and they kind of ran out of room, so they were trying to find their way down and out of the that particular space. So I got called in by this customer who actually found me on YouTube, and so I came out to take care of this nest for them. So something I don't usually show is me kind of getting set up. My setup time takes about frickin', I don't know, 30 minutes, 40 minutes. I got so much stuff, I got all these tools. Something I don't show is actually how I prep my vacuum. So I just dropped a few drops of dish soap into the bottom there. Put a little bit of water at the bottom, it's about 2 inches down there. And, oops, before you do that, let's clean off the filter. So that filter gets caked with, you know, insulation, drywall dust, envelope, paraphernalia, all kinds of stuff. So it's good to give that a little bit of a brush before you get started. My cord doesn't have an earth ground post to it anymore. It got broken off, so it's hard for me sometimes to remember which side is the positive, which is the ground, or which side is the positive, which side is the neutral. And I figured just kind of keep in some shots of me getting my my suit on. Oh, let's not show that. Be naughty. So I put my suit on just like everybody else, one leg at a time. And you'll see here, I'm not wearing one of my sweatshirts. Usually I have a sweatshirt on, but the sweatshirt was soiled from the last removal. So I only had a long sleeve tee left over, which I don't really like wearing those because I do often get stung through them. But as long as I'm mindful about how taut the fabric is when I'm doing removals, I have less of a chance to get stung. You can see I pulled the sleeves up pretty close over my wrists, pretty much up to the center of my palm. And then when I pull the glove over, the sleeve of the glove and that sleeve are usually enough to protect from stings. Really, the suit is super effective as long as you have the proper undergarments wearing underneath of it. So the first thing I had to do here was expose where the nest was. I could see it. You can see, like, right there by my hand, there's some envelope that was being built in those grooves, and the fact that I was barely touching that siding and they already started swarming. Like, typically if they were built into a cavity above that soffit, that little bit of vibration wouldn't have set them off. So I knew that they had to be right up above there, between those two factors, the envelope and the vibration set them off. So. And right there, I popped it open. I could see the nest pretty much right away. So since they're swarming heavy, they're not going to go right back to the nest and and with this type of nest, there's really no hole to like put the vacuum to start like sucking them up to get the numbers down. So it's really reliant 100% on the black flag misting spray to batten down the numbers. Just some extra shots of just them flying around and getting a little bit of a swarm going on. I was getting a couple tools together because I did have to get this soffit down, which is kind of a pain in the butt because the stuff like kind of snaps into place, and then there's usually a screw on one of the perforated ends. So one side snaps in to the opposite side, and then the other side's screwed in. So I just had to pop off a nail. It's like a roofing nail, galvanized. Galvanized is a zinc coating over top of a steel nail. And it protects it from being oxidized. Zinc doesn't oxidize, but steel does. steel will oxidize and become rusty. That's what rust is. It's oxidized ferrous metal. Science lesson for everybody. So there's the nest, which is significant. I mean, that's a decent sized nest. As you can see in between here, there's plywood above, and there's a piece of 2x4 that the soffit is mounted to, just to kind of allow for some air insulation. And between that, basically 2 inches worth, or well, I guess it's 1 5/8, is what a 2x4 thickness is. Not really 2 inches, it's actually 1 5/8 inches. So that depth was how much depth that nest had between the soffit and the plywood. But still, that's decent size. I guess there is one big patty and then about 4 little satellite patties on top of it. Get a nice shot of the sky there. That was pretty. One thing that people don't consider when I'm doing these removals is that I set up all the shots. And that gets to be a bit cumbersome when you're trying to do a removal, and sometimes it's time sensitive because you got to try to get the nest down and out and in the bin so not all the numbers come pouring off the nest, so you're stuck with a huge swarm. But at the same time, I want to get good shots because, you know, I want you guys to see what I see, and so, yeah, so sometimes that's difficult to do while you're in the midst of a removal. So a little bit of vacuuming, and this is really just to kind of to get the ones that were not flying yet but looked like they were soon going to be flying. So that way, once the nest was in the bin, they weren't going to be flying all over the place once I got them home. Home, comb, alone. Does that excite any of you when I say that? I swear half of my comments are about how I say comb. And it's never the same people, it's usually different people. Old southern end of Lancaster County, PA. So these guys started to get pretty extensive with the envelope. Now you got all these workers going out and flying and foraging, and they are coming back with all this envelope to build, but there's really no place to build it. So they just started just building out the left and right side of the nest, of the comb, and then building outside of the soffit. And it was just kind of like they were running out of space. They couldn't really build it on top of the comb, so they just built it out to the sides. Given this a little bit more time, I think there would have been another comb being built towards us where the camera's sitting, towards there, up in that dead spot of plywood. I think there would have been another comb extending out that way. However, I think this would have been a single season nest just because it's too exposed to the elements. It would have the cold would have set in and killed this colony. And that's usually the life cycle of a colony. So people ask this a lot in the comments: is what is a multi-season and what is a single season nest? A single season nest is when a foraging queen starts a colony in the beginning of May and goes and finds a place to build a nest and start her colony. The whole colony, this whole thing, started from one individual queen. So she starts the colony, she builds it. By the end of, say, October, when it starts to get really cold, the first frost sets in and usually kills a colony like this. So by this time, this colony would be dead. But in multi-season colonies, where they're protected by, like, in a cavity, like in a house or something, look at the size of that thing. Then it broke apart while I was holding it. But a nest that gets built inside of somebody's house, where it's weather protected, it's insulated from the elements, it has a chance to get cold to where the wasp then become dormant and get slow, but not cold enough to kill them. So then by the next spring, the colony just kind of like warms up, and then they start foraging and going out, and the colony then continues, and the comb and everything keeps getting built more and more on top of that, and the nests just get big. And that's what these people have been referring to in my comments and saying, have you ever dealt with a super nest? Well, super nest is kind of a new term, thanks to the media, in regards to one guy finding this massive western or southern yellow jacket nest down in like Louisiana or something. Well, that happens here too. It's just that they happen more like inside buildings where it's not as out in the open like that particular video was, where you're seeing it dangling from the front porch of somebody's house who didn't. The house must have been vacant or something. But this happens. I mean, I do remove multi-season nests out of the out like basements and things. So, but that's the life cycle of what it means to be a single season or a multi-season nest. So there were a lot of dead corpses and things on the ground, so I vacuum them up and get them out of there. Another comment that people ask is what I do with the property, these people's property and things when I do a removal and have to tear stuff out and whatever. So I decided to leave a little shot in and me fixing the soffit, because this is usually what I do. If it's drywall and I had to cut into it and I don't have the time or whatever to do a repair, which I don't talk to the homeowner about repairing the place anyway. Usually I tell them that, you know, I have a number of a fellow who can do, it's actually a bandmate of mine, who can do drywall repair if they want to give him their phone or give them his phone number. But I never tell them that I'm going to repair the work for them. Now, unless it's an elderly person or someone who mentions it in conversation that they would need it done, then I would take care of it for them if they asked. But I try not to offer that because I'm usually bouncing from one removal to the next. But in this case, I mean, usually I do seal up the hole, regardless of whether I can actually like professionally fix it or not. So I brought the nest home to the girls, but the thing was that there was already nests on the ground that had hatched out new adults. You can see them next to my feet, and I didn't know they were there. So I dumped this thing out, and all that excitement stirred them up, and it scared the crap out of me, and I ran away. Well, then I tried to usher the girls away from them, and they just wouldn't listen, and they wouldn't get out of the way. You know, they don't get stung. They've only been stung by bald-faced hornets once, and even though I was trying to get them away from the bin, they kept going around it. And I'm like, well, you're gonna learn one way or another, I guess. So you can't tell these girls anything. They're gonna do what they want to do. But just a disclaimer: nobody got stung here, but they get chased around by these yellow jackets. I have tried to do this voiceover for this particular scene about 6 times now, and I'm cracking up and going back because watching these girls get chased by yellow jackets has got to be one of the funniest things that I do with these videos. Especially Ginger and Angel. They run away from these things like straight up and down and like looking around behind them and stuff. It is the funniest thing. Pigeon's skittish about everything, so she doesn't really hang around the flying wasps very much. Just the buzzing noise alone makes them run, so they're not getting stung when they're running away. But watch Ginger here. She gets all stirred up about something flying around, and she like turns around and hauls off like and just making her cooing noises as she does it, like, you know, how dare these things fly at me while they're tearing apart their nest. And there's one scene where Angel gets one flying right at her face, and she gets all worked up about it and like flaps her wing at it and scrapes it with her foot, and she doesn't get stung. I checked her out after it happened, and she didn't get stung. She just got chased. It was so funny. And before people ask about the black flag being sprayed around the comb, I'm not spraying it on the comb, and it's an optical illusion with the camera, but it's not blowing onto the comb. It's blowing in front of the camera, but past the comb. So there's no contamination of these comb, even from the last video when people were asking about me spraying it above the bin. It was not enough was getting in the bin to cause any kind of contamination. Ginger. She's such a sissy when it comes to the wasps flying around. But that, I think it's just instilled in her head since that time she got stung by the bald-faced hornet. I think she just, from then on, anything that flies around her, she gets all worked up about and runs away. But she comes right back to it, like she doesn't learn, like. And she runs away again here too. So I tried to just stir them up, because at this point I had vacuumed up a few of them and whatnot off camera. I try to flick one over to Pigeon so she can start eating, but of course she takes it the wrong way and runs away from it. One flies at a Ginger here, and Pigeon. But alright, the shot where I take my foot and I scrape something right in front of the camera, then just focus on, right here, focus on Angel. There's one flying around her. She's crazy with her foot, watch. She didn't get hurt, I swear to God she didn't get hurt. It was, something flew and was flying around her head, and then it got stuck in her feathers, and then she got all worked up about it because it was buzzing around, and then she ran off. Oh my God, it was so funny. But right after that happened, after I got done laughing, I went over and checked on her and picked her up and looked underneath her feathers and stuff and her plumage, and she didn't have any sting, and she wasn't sore, but it spooked her. That's so funny. So, when I tell people about what predators there are to wasps and yellow jackets and hornets, are possums, skunks, and raccoons. So far I've shown you a skunk destroying a nest. Now I'm going to show you a possum. It's spelled opossum, but the O is silent. It's possum. It's pronounced possum. And they're marsupials. And marsupials are a type of animal that has a pouch, like a kangaroo, or a koala bear, or a wombat. And they carry their babies in their pouch. And, you know, like wombats, their pouches are reversed, so they're actually, the opening is faced their bum. However, possums are faced forward, just like kangaroos. So what these guys do is they go around, they scavengers, and they go around and look for bugs and things, and wasps are a part of their diet. And they'll eat adults, they'll eat larvae, but they do hunt the larvae primarily. So as you can see, she just spat something out. So what she does is she picks it up, she chomps on it like she's chewing gum, literally like she's chewing gum. That's a good way to put it. She just chews and chews and chews, gets all the flavor out of it, just like you would with a piece of gum. And then once it's pretty much all the larvae and things are crushed up, and she gets most of that stuff sucked out, and she just spits out the chunk of cellulose, or the comb. Watch here. Blech. See, she just opens up her mouth like that and drops it out. There's a couple good shots of you. Just have to kind of wait around for one where you can see that something actually fall out of her mouth. But she was a baby. She's very young. These guys only live about maybe 3-4 years. But this one's a yearling. This one's probably born first thing this spring. She just dropped that out. You'll see her tongue come out and like almost like that, and the thing falls out. I think this is a good shot of it here. Such a cute little thing. They can't see very well, so even though even though I was standing probably about 5 feet away, I zoom out at one point. You can see how close I was. She had, I mean, I'm sure she had an idea something was nearby, but she didn't know how close I was. She couldn't see me, and I have a big spotlight on my camera, so even if she could see a little bit in the dark, she couldn't see because I had that light shining right at her. It's kind of like a deer in the headlight syndrome. You see how close I was, maybe 8 feet away. She had a big chunk of comb there. So I would come out here during the daytime, and I would see all my comb that after the girls had picked it apart. I would see all these little like balls of cellulose. I'm like, what the heck is that from? Like, I didn't know if it was the skunk doing it or the possum. Well, it turns out it's the possum that does it. The skunk will kind of like actually like pick out the larva, but these guys just eat the whole comb and then spit out the cellulose. I love her little ears, so cute. So she caught wind of me, and she was seeking shelter. Plus the thunder crashed. I don't know if it was as much me as it was the thunder, but so she wanted to seek shelter. And the people who owned the house before I did, they had built a little tree house up in this maple tree, and so she goes up the tree. So you can see her climbing there. She goes up the tree and kind of runs across that little tree house, and then gets up in one of the branches. They kind of have like a rat tail, but it's very muscular, and they can actually hang upside down with it. Hang upside down from like a tree branch. I was hoping maybe she'd do it, but they do that more when they're sleeping. Oh, look at that. So cute. So their nose is very, very sensitive to smells. And not just on the inside, but the outside too. And they have very good hearing. Those ears are great for hearing. So this is a little bit later at night. This is about midnight. She'd come back down out of the tree after the storm. And a good bit of comb left there. She started going to town on it. And unfortunately, she was a little bit more skittish this time around, so I was really having to be quiet. And she kept looking behind her, and I had my slippers on, so I was trying to be as quiet as I could, but I didn't want to scare her away, because I wanted to try to get as many shots as I could of her really tearing open this huge comb. If you watch close enough after she takes a big chunk like that, like look at that huge piece. That is nuts, but that's packed with larvae. And then she'll chew it up for a bit, and you see her tongue kind of flipping out, and then all of a sudden her tongue comes out straight, and then a big ball come out of her mouth. I think she did it in front of her where we couldn't see at that time. But that whole nest was gone the next morning when I came out. So, but I could smell a skunk. So when I was out there that night, I could smell a skunk. So there was definitely one out, and so she probably ate her fill, and then waddled off, and then the skunk came around and ate the rest. But I mean, it was gone. Not a speck of that comb was left when I came back out. I mean, there was like remnants like this, like all the powdery paraphernalia, but nothing like nothing like what's there now. So she's kind of catching wind of me. She wasn't sure what was back there. You could tell she was just maybe something wasn't right, and she was gonna waddle off. But the light doesn't phase her; it's noises that phase her. So once his ears start going, I try to stay as still as I can. See her drop that thing out of her mouth? So I watched her for a good while too. I think I was out there for about 20 minutes, sneaking up on her. And another big ball come out of her mouth. And I probably got about 6 feet away from her. And by that point, she heard something and spooked her, and she trotted off. So, get some good shots of her cleaning. It's really cute. Really clean animal for being something that scavenges. And all the yellow jackets crawling around still. Unfazed. She's totally unfazed by it. Alright guys, thanks so much for watching this video. If you guys enjoyed this content, drop in the comments, let me know what you think. If you subscribed already, thanks so much for coming back and supporting my channel. If you haven't subscribed already, please consider doing so. I try to have content coming out several times throughout the week, and try to get new content as well. Thanks so much for coming back to view my videos, and thanks so much for supporting my channel, and I'll catch you guys on the next video.